We ready? Gordon? Good morning. My name is John Lawrence. I serve in the 13th Legislative District in Chester County. I'm joined this morning by my colleagues, Representative Blum, Representative Tallman, Representative Denlinger, and Representative McGinnis. As we all know, this is a busy time of year, and there are several meetings going on right now. People might be coming and going, and I know that there are several representatives who wanted to be here today but cannot be here due to scheduling conflicts. Our focus today is on the implementation of Common Core educational standards in Pennsylvania. These standards, developed over time by national organizations populated with unelected bureaucrats, are being promulgated in states across our nation with little public input. We stand here today to express grave concern with the establishment of national education standards. Education is a matter that has been historically left to the states, not the federal government. And while the federal government did not directly develop the Common Core standards, it has embraced and promoted them. In a day and age where the federal government overreaches into nearly every facet of our lives, this is yet another example of national-level intrusion on state-level affairs. Now, to be clear, we believe educational standards should be strong, rigorous, and competitive. Students need to leave high school prepared for the working world or for college, ready to compete on the world stage. But a national one-size-fits-none standard is not the solution. It is in this spirit that we've introduced a 5-bill package on the Common Core issue. I will speak briefly on 2 bills before turning it over to Representative Blum and then Representative Tallman. I'm introducing House Bill 1554, which addresses a specific concern relating to the collection of individual student data. Widely publicized reports indicate that federal databases will collate and track student data on a very granular level, and that this information will be collected by states and remitted to the federal government. In my view, there is no reason for the federal government to compile a detailed database on young children's grades, personal information, etc. This is ripe for fraud and abuse and clearly a violation of privacy for our youngest citizens. This legislation would prevent any unauthorized transfer of data from the state to the federal government. I'll also speak to House Bill 1553, which will be introduced by Representative Rob Kaufman, who could not make the press conference today. Rep. Kaufman's legislation deals with the implementation of national standardized tests in Pennsylvania. This legislation will prohibit PDE, the Secretary of Education, or the State Board of Education from imposing a national standardized assessment or survey on any student enrolled in a Pennsylvania public school. By doing so, this bill will help ensure that future academic assessments administered in our public schools will be designed specifically for Pennsylvania students in response to the Commonwealth's unique needs. And now I'd like to turn it over to Representative Blum.
Good job, John. Good morning, I'm Stephen Blum, State Representative from Cumberland County. First, I'd like to applaud Governor Corbett for his decision to pause the implementation of Common Core until more information could be gathered, and that's an important step in addressing the situation we face. I also want to thank the administration for the information and assurances that they've provided me through a series of conversations I've had with different officials from PDE and other individuals. And most importantly, I want to thank the parents and citizens, I know some of whom are here this morning, because parents and citizens have been contacting me in a consistent and energetic way, and that the initiative that you're seeing today arose because of you, the citizens, sounding the alarm. And these voices that are being raised cut across the ideological spectrum, from conservative Tea Party families to liberal teachers union families. This is a bipartisan issue. People are concerned about the implementation of the Common Core in Pennsylvania. And after studying and learning and asking questions and listening, I have a deep concern about the potential negative impact of the Common Core that remains strong. The future of our children's education hangs in the balance, and it's important to act now to fix measures into the law to prevent the Common Core standards from being permanently imposed on Pennsylvania students without full legislative vetting and without citizens' full participation in the standard legislative process. Some of the problems with the Common Core standards include its origins, because it arose not organically from the experiences of grassroots Pennsylvania educators, but rather it's being pushed upon us through sophisticated outside organizations with big budgets and a national top-down education agenda. all without benefit of a legislative vote. There are any number of red flags when it comes to the actual application of the Common Core standards, including conflicting information about whether Pennsylvania intends to expand Common Core beyond math and English into science, history, and other curriculum areas. The implementation of testing and assessments tied to the Common Core standards represents another problematic situation for students and teachers alike. And there are serious challenges surrounding the transition costs for schools and the taxpayers who pay for them. But for me, one of the biggest concerns about the Common Core standards is that there are no empirical, academic, or scientifically conducted peer-reviewed studies to show that the Common Core standards will actually raise U.S. student performance. Instead, the Common Core is a vast, well-funded, professionally promoted beta test experiment of an unproven system on Pennsylvania's kids. Representative Lawrence has talked about some of the bills in this particular package. I co-sponsor all the bills. The bill that I'm the prime sponsor of would make sure that the Common Core standards are not forced upon our private, religious, or homeschool educational settings in Pennsylvania, and will not impose on the academic freedom of Pennsylvania citizens and rights of religious conscience. When this legislation that we're announcing today is introduced, we'll finally have an opportunity to put ourselves and fellow members of the legislature on the record and give citizens the voice that you deserve in establishing Pennsylvania's education policy. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Representative Tallman.
Thank you for being here. I'm from, I have parts of York and Adams County, and so I've seen my fair share of good and bad fruit. So I have over here, rotten to the core. I wanted to have a worm in it, but I couldn't get that. But in all seriousness, I'm a former school board member, having served 2 terms. It removes local control from the educational process here in Pennsylvania. And Representative Blum hit a couple of these. And there's no quantification of what the improvement will be in the educational outcome of our students. So let's just talk about the local control issue real quick. And I'm just going to quote from Bill Gates, who has funneled hundreds of million dollars from his foundation to get Common Core implemented state or nationwide. He had said it in 2009 in the National Conference of State Legislators. We get the states to adopt common standards, which will cause common tests, which will make for a common curriculum. So essentially, our school boards, I have teachers' hands tied up here, but our school boards' hands are going to be tied because A, they're going to have to meet the assessments by the state, and B, getting material that's not going to be Common Core is going to be very difficult. So when you hear from the Department of Education, anything that's being said about the local control, legally, that's probably true, but in practicality, it's not going to be true because, like I said, our school boards are going to be tied. Our standards, I think we're in phase 2 of academic standards here in Pennsylvania, starting in the early 90s to our present time. Those standards have not worked. Matter of fact, you in the media probably can identify school districts that are utterly failing, one very close to this building right here. So let's just look at this in practical terms. We're going to have a bench press contest, and you have to qualify, you have to bench press 100 pounds. So you can't pass that test. So we think we're going to add 50 more pounds onto that barbell. You can tell I don't bench press, so I don't use the right term. Whatever that bar is. But anyway, you're going to add 50 more pounds to that weight, and you're going to expect them to lift that. They haven't been able to lift the 100 pounds. Adding more standards is not going to increase academic positive outcomes. What really needs to happen is we need to have the dynamics in the classroom and families is where educational outcomes will be affected, which I'm going to talk now to our teachers. Let's say that you decide for whatever reason that we need to spend 2 to 3 weeks on fractions. The Common Core will not allow you to do that because your schedule is going to be dictated. You will not be able to deviate from that schedule. So it makes, right now we have math And English, let's decide. I don't know if we still diagram sentences, but let's say we have to spend a month on diagramming sentences. The teacher will not be able to do it because they are strapped. And that's why I have here, our teachers' hands are tied. When we do this Common Core, our teachers' flexibilities to meet the needs of their classrooms is going to be tied. And then lastly, as a school board member, and I've had several school board members in my district communicate to me via email, there are costs. I know Pennsylvania Department of Education says, hey, it's going to be minimal. There are costs involved with transitioning to Common Core. You're going to have to be buying textbooks. And they say, well, they're going to have to do those anyways. Yes, but as a school board member, if I was going to watch my budget, math and science, or math and English were 2 textbooks I could make last a couple more years because they don't change that much. So, those are 2 things that can happen as a school board member. If I wanted to save costs, I didn't necessarily have to replace my math book. Math doesn't change. But, and then there's going to be the cost of training and implementing this Common Core into our school districts. All of those have costs. Thank you very much. And where's John at? We going to open this up to questions, or?
Sure. I'd like to just mention that we've also been joined by Representative Metcalf. Thank you for coming. We'd be happy to open it up to questions relevant to the Common Core. Does anyone have any questions?